No one wants to lose to Michigan. However, that game on November 30th, that loss might have been exactly what Ohio State needed to propel them to where they're at now. What say you on that?
Yeah, I honestly, I think that game got so much in their head. Instead of playing football, they were beating Michigan. And when they're allowed to just play the game, I think that team is a better team. It might have been timing wise where they just needed the time, to get into it. But think about it. You had the beginning of the season for all of these new everythings to gel together.
Yep.
You had a pivotal game in Michigan to get you pissed off and really mad that you don't want to lose another game. And then you had going into a playoff season where now there's something that you can play for. I think that was perfect math to be able to set this up to be a great season for.
Yeah. And Ohio State, to me, has played two bad games this year. One was the Nebraska game, which they squeaked out a victory. And the other one was the Michigan game where they tried to beat Michigan at their own game, which you were saying. It's like they were trying to beat Michigan, not taking into account what they do best. And I heard someone say this. I cannot remember who. I listened to it on a podcast, but they said that, I think it was actually Nick Saban. That game means so much to them. It's like hitting rock bottom. There is so much pressure to win that game. They have literally done the worst thing they can do this year, which is lose to Michigan. Their expectations were so low. Now they are playing free. They're playing easy. They're not worried. It's like, because what's the worst that can happen? It can't be worse than losing to Michigan. We've got to the college football semifinals. Now we're going to go beat Tennessee's ass if we can, if we play like we're capable of. We're going to go beat Oregon's ass and play like we're capable of. Next, we got Texas. So it's like, and these things were all like, Ohio State got seeded 8th. They were probably the 5th best team, if not the 4th best team in the country. And, so there's a little slight to that. They got to host a playoff game. They beat an SEC team, bounce back. They go out to Oregon. They avenge a loss that they had earlier in the year. And they didn't just avenge the loss. They buried that loss 6 feet deep. Now you're going down to Texas in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas to play Texas. So a virtual home game for them. Their starting quarterback was a kid that committed to Ohio State way back when, Quinn Ewers. And it's like, so you got all these different little like storylines and mixed it. And then if you win this game, you got either Penn State or Notre Dame waiting. So that's a whole other storyline.
I love it that they jostled this up enough that you're going to see a lot of different opponents in the playoffs.
It's a lot of fun too. It's a lot of fun because you're playing teams that you don't normally play. Ohio State actually will open up its season next year against Texas in Columbus, but it's a team like I went to Ohio State, Texas back in 2005 and 2006. That's how long ago it was. And then I think they played in like 2009 or 10 in a bowl game, but they don't play very often. This is only the 4th matchup of all time with these two like historic programs. But one more thing, like to address the Michigan thing, did it unlock something? I think it damn well did, because like I said, they hit rock bottom. They can't do anything worse than lose to Michigan in a season. But now their ultimate goal is still on the table of going to win that national title. And there's a whole bunch of Michigan fans chirping out there that are saying, well, whatever Ohio State does, that's fine because we beat them. It's like, well, that game's over. We don't care. Michigan ended up finishing their season really nice. They beat Alabama in the bowl game, and they did a nice job. But it's like, we're hopefully beyond that. Next year, that's a whole different mountain we'll climb when we get to it. But this year, the goal should be right in front of them. And here's the final 4 teams. You got Notre Dame taking on Penn State Thursday night. You got Texas and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And by the way, I saw there was a weather alert for Dallas. They're expecting like 7 inches of snow Thursday night into Friday.
Beautiful.
Insane. I mean, it's in a dome, but still, like, I don't think they have snow plows and stuff down there. It's going to be wild. So a couple other things on the college football playoff real quick. So opening lines, this was as of last look, the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State 5.5 point favorite. Total is 53.5. Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl down in Miami is a 1.5-point favorite. That game line's a little bit lower, 46.5. Just at quick glance, who do you like in those two games? Ohio State, Texas, and Notre Dame, Penn State.
I'm looking for Ohio State, Penn State. I think that would be an awesome playoffs.
That would be kind of cool. Like, and that would be obviously a rematch of a pretty tight game earlier in the year. Now,
but it's nice to see Notre Dame in the mix.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. And like I've told you before, I root for Notre Dame when they're not playing Ohio State. So a lot of my family roots for Notre Dame, likes Notre Dame. And they're just, it's kind of a cool story. So
now, okay, real quick question.
Yeah.
Let's just say they never change the format for the playoffs. Who's in the playoffs based on those people who obviously aren't playing in it? Who do you think we would be seeing?
Well, that's a good question, because that was kind of my next question for you. So look, we're good synchronicity mode. So I'm going to answer your question with another question.
Okay.
So here is what the playoffs would look like if they changed one thing. And I think this is a thing that's going to happen. So they got the 4 teams with automatic buys, right? So it was 1 Oregon, 2 Texas, or I'm sorry, 2 Georgia, 3 Boise State, and 4 Arizona State. Those are the 4 highest seeds that won their conference. Clemson got in, but they were the 12th seed because they were the lowest remaining champ. If they would have just seeded these teams based on their rankings, here's what it would have looked like. So it would have been Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4. So in the opening round, you would have had Boise State and Indiana. Pretty competitive game, I think, there. You would have had Clemson, Notre Dame. That's kind of fun. You would have had Ohio State and Arizona State, and you would have had SMU and Tennessee. All kind of different matchups, but that would have been 1 through 12, what it would have looked like. So I have sort of changed my opinion of reseeding. I don't like the idea of reseeding anymore, but I do like the idea of just seed based on the rankings. That you can let the automatic qualifiers in, but they don't get an automatic first round bye. So what say you to that? Do you like that format better, or do you like the way it is now?
I like the way that it is now. I think I think we need to see it for a couple of years to see how this shakes out.
Yeah.
But I think what we saw this time will show itself as being I'm with you. The way that they see these things out, those who got a bye worked against them in, I think, the games that followed to that. You keep these guys playing ball, or they're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And Oregon probably has the biggest complaint because they got arguably the toughest team in the playoffs, and they were rewarded nothing for going 13-0. They did get that first round bye, but if we look back at that, they would have been playing the winner of Boise State, Indiana, which would have been a much more a much easier, All
right. So on the old school, like, what are your 2 teams that are making it to the championship?
This season, I mean, I'm obviously picking the Buckeyes, and I want Notre Dame to win. I think Penn State, as long as Abdul Carter plays, he's their best defender, maybe future Cleveland Brown. I think if he plays, Penn State wins close. I think regardless, that's a close game. So,
all right, what about under old format? Thinking Georgia, Oregon is
no, not necessarily, because I think like coming in, it would still be the teams that get rolling. So if we're going the old format, I'm thinking Oregon's definitely in the Final Four. I'm thinking, well, you'd have your Notre Dame Penn State matchup in round 2 instead of round 3. You get your Ohio State Texas matchup in round 2 and round 3. And then you'd have Georgia getting a really easy draw in the sense of like they're getting a Tennessee or SMU winner. So I would probably have Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon in the Final Four in that circumstance. So I mean, it is what it is. There's no they're figuring it out. They tried, but in my opinion, I think you just got to rank them and seed them that way. That's just my opinion, but we'll see what happens. So Let me give you I'm going to give us a real quick, brief rundown of Ohio State and Texas and kind of what it looks like. So right now, Ohio State, based on seeding, number 8 team, Texas, number 5 team, Texas 13-2. Both losses are to Georgia. Ohio State 12-2. We talked about the loss to Oregon and loss to Michigan, excuse me. But the answer and the keys to victory are obvious. Continue to get the ball in space to your big play weapons. Jeremiah Smith, the best offensive player in college football. You could also argue right now, Ohio State has the best offensive player and the best defensive player in college football, with Caleb Downs on defense and Jeremiah Smith on offense. Both guys that were not in the program last year. You also have the running game, but again, throw the ball to set up your run. Will Howard's decision-making is obviously key. He has been playing excellent football, turnover-free football, really, the first 2 weeks. There was an interception against Tennessee that was like an unbelievable highlight reel catch that I actually think was pass interference. But anyway, Will Howard's going to be going against Texas's number 4 scoring defense. They give up about 14.5 points a game, and their number 3 total defense in the country. They only give up about 277 yards per game. The defense versus the former Buckeye Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian. The last time Steve Sarkisian took on Ohio State was in the national championship. He was Alabama's offensive coordinator back in 2020. We have to limit big plays and force Ewers into mistakes. You have to continue to get pressure on him and keep it going. And the final note, 2 down, 2 to go. So keep your foot on the gas from the opening kickoff. Again, they've jumped out to 21-0 and 34-0 leads respectively. And this team has all the ingredients to be successful. They just have to execute it, and that's what it comes down to. So one other thing on Texas too. Their defense, again, 4th in points per game, 3rd in total yards, 3rd in passing yards, 14th in rushing yards, 7th in 20-plus yard plays allowed, and they are 4th in the country in sacks. Now, their offense against Ohio State's defense, Ohio State is going to get after this team, in my opinion. They are banged up on the offensive line. They have some good offensive linemen, but they are banged up. Texas scores about 34 points a game. Ohio State gives up about 12 points a game. Texas overall, about 444 yards a game. Ohio State gives up 200 yards less than that per game on average. Passing yards, Ohio State only gives up about 150. Texas throws for about 280. Rushing, Texas 165. Ohio State only gives up 92. Texas has 102 20-yard plays this season. Ohio State's only given up 40 on the season. But look at that number, 33 sacks against not a very tough schedule. And Ohio State has 46 or 47 sacks on defense. And Ohio State has had a pretty tough schedule. So I highlighted the 2 losses on the bottom. They lost to Georgia 30-15, and they lost in the SEC title game. But that was to Georgia's backup quarterback, 22-19. They've also had close games against Texas A&M, against Clemson in the playoff. They went to overtime against Arizona State. They almost lost to Vanderbilt. So this is not a team that's like this juggernaut. They are a very, very good team, but they are not this juggernaut opponent. So I think Ohio State has all the pieces. If they continue to do what they're supposed to, they win. So we'll get more on that in a little bit. Joe, you and BJ, I was out of town on vacation. I remember you guys talking about Ryan Day, and me and you have addressed this since. But did Ryan Day relearn how to coach from November 30th now to the past few weeks, or does he just have this mental hurdle against Michigan? What say you? He's to me, he's one of the top 2, if not top coach in all of college football.
It is a win-loss game, and when you lose consecutive games to Michigan,
they've lost 4 in a row.
There is a conversation that needs to be had.
I 100% agree with that. You cannot lose the Michigan game over and over and over and still be Ohio State's coach.
So I'm not looking to impugn his ability to be able to coach.
Sure.
I'm impugning his ability to beat Michigan and how substantial that is to their schedule.
You can't bring in like a substitute coach for the Michigan game, but if you could almost bring in like a Tressel or Urban Meyer for that game to like stand with him on the sidelines, that would be the ultimate thing. But like Ryan Day for every other game is the coach you want to have.
100%.
So they have to marry this like Tressel Meyer mentality versus Michigan versus what Ryan Day does the other 364 days of the year. And I have heard they put too much emphasis on the game. And I've heard that from the Ohio State athletic director. I've heard that from other coaches. I've heard that from analysts, talking heads. I don't think you can say that out loud to Ohio State fans because that is the game that matters the most until January 20th if you win the national title.
So here, so let's just we run a poll and we're going to fire Coach Day if the poll goes in a single direction.
Sure.
And we do it the days after the Michigan loss, Day would be fired.
Yes.
And so if you
or at least very close.
Yes.
Very close.
But then you get a couple of these last 2 games since then.
Yep.
And you put a halo on Day immediately following. So you can't both have the guy that should be fired and the guy that should be enshrined in the same 2-month period of time.
This is the catch-22 we are in. It is a double-edged sword of
for sure
greatness and a flaw. And it's really, to me, this is such a mental hurdle because you see what Ohio State is, you see what they can be, but they just forgot it for 3 hours on a Saturday in November. And this team, like I said, maybe though that loss, and one thing I will say too, in 20 years from now, let's say in 2024 or 2025, because it's technically the, well, let's just say 2044, because it's the 2024 season. When they bring back the 20th anniversary of this team and they win a national title, no one's going to say, oh, but they lost to Michigan. Some people might, but no one's going to remember that. They're going to remember they were the 2024 national champions.
Yep.
So
agreed.
At the end of the day, that is the most important thing on the resume. Yes, losing to Michigan has to be taken into a huge consideration. But at the end of the day, what's the main job in sports? To win your league, to win your, and that hurdle, that Michigan hurdle used to eliminate them from the Big Ten, which it did this year. But it didn't eliminate them from the playoff picture. And now they are the monster in the playoffs, and they are taking down an SEC foe. They took down the number 1 team in the country. They got another SEC team and then another team that's awaiting in either Notre Dame and Penn State. So you got to take care of business first. But
yeah, ask the fans, would you rather beat Michigan and lose the national championship, or would you win the national championship and lose the Michigan?
That is to me, I used to think, especially this year, I used to think you have to beat Michigan this year. They're 7-5 coming in, or they're 6-5 coming into that game. They lost all these players to the NFL. They lost all the coaches. We know they're not cheating this year. It's like, just go out and beat them, take care of business. But they obviously didn't, but they can still win the national title. So to me, I used to be in the camp of you got to beat Michigan and then see what happens. But if it's a one answer or the other, it's like, well, we'll lose to Michigan and take the national title.
Michigan. That's what it really means.
Well, F Michigan.
F Michigan.
And F the rest of college football, because we're going to go for the national title.
There you go.
So, okay. But I do want to point out that Ryan Day, I'm going to say his name again, because he is a great football coach. He has a 68-10 record. He, for a hot minute there, was second in winning percentage behind Dan Lanning of Oregon. He has now taken that back over. 872, 87.2% win percentage, which is the best in college football, overtaking Dan Lanning again. But 21-9 versus ranked opponents, 13-8 versus top 10. And remember, Ryan Day couldn't beat top 5 teams. He's now 5-7. And if he wins this game against Texas, he'll be 6-7. against top 5 opponents. So if you go 500 against top 5 in the country, that's pretty damn good. So I don't know. Ryan Day is a lot of people out there that don't necessarily love him, but will tolerate him if he can win a national title. I'm in the love Ryan Day camp as long as he keeps it rolling. So are there flaws? Yes, but
who's the alternative? Like, you're not putting someone there better than him at this point.
I was thinking that too. I'm like, who else would you want? And I don't want this to be a moratorium on Ryan Day, because right now he's doing the job he was put into place.
That's right.
They recruit at the highest level. Their NIL seems to be in order. They have a great team chemistry. No one wants to end this season. These guys that came back for a 5th year, obviously there's a great culture in the program. There's great chemistry. There's great leaders. And obviously talent is first and foremost. So it is what it is.
Jason says the Michigan loss was the best thing to happen to them. I'd rather them have a championship. Day is 70-10.
Yep.
Also, folks, this rival goes in cycles. Day is awesome.
Yeah.
So
and I have to check on that, but I looked and he was 68-10. But hopefully on January 20th, he's 70-10. So but we'll see.
Honestly, on this show, if you disagree with Day, we will pull your ass from the stands and have you coach for a day. Yes. And if you lose, we will gang tackle your ass too.
Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with that.